I want to talk a little bit about introducing quotes and how you're supposed to include sources in your writing. So, a lot of the ways to do this is just to do quotes. You can say X just stands for the author states, and you can just quote. And then usually you would have what page number it came from in parentheses after that. Um, there's a lot of this is a document that you have in your folder for Unit 3. So you can just look at several of these, and just these are just different templates that you can use to explain and introduce your sources. Another thing that you do is a lot of times when you introduce a quote, you can't just say it and then move on. You have to kind of explain that quote. So you can kind of restate it in your own words, saying, in other words, X believes blank, or X's point is that blank. So you're kind of translating for your audience what this quote really means. So again, this is something that you can refer back to easily. I want to show you another model of a way to introduce sources in an actual essay. This is more of a formal researched argument. So it looks a little bit different than the writing experience that I'm asking you to do, but it's still a really good model too, so it's not a bad one to look at, and I'll include it here as well. So one way to introduce a source is to put all of the information up there. So she puts in the article, Do Social Networks Make Us Sick? Author Vito Pellecci recounts the story of Marissa Murray. So it explains who the author is, what the article is. They didn't tell us where it came from, but that information will all be in the works cited later. So one way to quote information is to start with a sentence. They were all looking at their phones, colon. You have a complete sentence before that, and then you have the quote, and then she really didn't need the period right there, but then she has the author and then the page number, and then the period should have gone after the parentheses. So sometimes you want to paraphrase a source. So she started with, according to Pellecci, there have been many studies, and explained it. And then she explained the source. For example, Larry Rosen, professor of psychology at California State University, gave a speech to the American Psychological Association outlining the results of the study. Because in that article, it wasn't Pellecci speaking, it was Larry Rosen. They're probably quoting Larry Rosen in that article, and she needed to explain where all of it came from. So I really appreciate knowing all of that information about where this information comes from. So that's another, down here's another instance of her using in the article, Facebook can make users feel worse. Author Jeffrey Mohan of the Baltimore Sun, she includes the publication in there, discusses a study led by the University of Michigan. So she puts all of that information in there again. And again, there's another example of paraphrasing. She puts the author, Mohan, and then she paraphrases, not quotes. She's putting information in her own words, but she's still giving credit where it's due, and she's saying she got this information from page 3 of the article Mohan wrote. So this one, she introduced an article earlier on by Steers, and then she just simply says Steers says, and then quotes, and then puts the page number, period. So those are just some ways of seeing how to introduce quotes and paraphrases in a real life scenario. Here I want to show you a different way to include your sources. So this writer chose not to do all of that information up front about where all of her sources come from and why they're reliable. She wanted a cleaner, wording where it could be kind of clunky when you say, so-and-so said this from this, and this is why they said it. And she prefers to paraphrase a lot and just tell you the source at the end. So like this whole paragraph is paraphrased, and then we have where she got that information, McDonnell and Malone, at the end, and there must not have been a page number or she would have included it. So that's another way you can do it. Again, here's another example of something that she paraphrased with the author's name and the page number at the end. Again, lots of paraphrasing, author, page number at the end. So in one instance, she did include at least the publication. She said, as explained in the Lancet, instead of saying Radcliffe or Richards said. We don't know who Radcliffe or Richards is, but maybe we know the Lancet is a medical journal, or maybe her audience knows that that's a medical journal, a well-respected medical journal, and that's why she included the publication up front instead of the author's name. And then she quotes and puts the author's name, and she put the year here, because maybe she has, or I guess that might be the page number. If she's doing MLA, it's most likely the page number. Different citation methods require different things. But in this class, we will be using MLA.